Hey there and welcome. Today we're going to tackle a huge topic, macroeconomics. Yep, that's the study of entire national economies. We're going to break down the big ideas, the major debates, and the key numbers that pretty much shape our entire world. So let me ask you a question. What if you could check the health of an entire country with just three numbers? Sounds kind of crazy, right? But that is exactly what macroeconomists try to do. They use a few key stats to take the pulse of a nation's economy. And today, we're going to figure out what those numbers are and, what they really mean. Okay, let's dive in. All right, so to get our heads around this, you have to understand that economists basically look at the economy through two completely different lenses. It's like they're using two different clocks, one for the short term and one for the long term. So on one hand, they're looking at the short-term stuff. This is all about the economic cycle, the booms and the busts, the recessions we hear about on the news all the time. But then they zoom way out to see the long-term trend. And that's the slow, steady path of growth that happens over decades, the kind of thing that shapes the world our kids and grandkids will live in. And this visual right here, it shows you exactly what I'm talking about. See that wavy orange line? That's the short-term cycle, full of ups and downs. But that steady green line that keeps pushing upwards, that's the long-term growth trend, and it's driven by the big stuff, like technology and productivity. The whole goal of economic policy really is to get that green line to go up while trying to smooth out those crazy bumps in the orange one. And that question of how we actually smooth out those bumps, well, that leads us straight into one of the biggest debates in all of economics. On one side, you have what's called the classical approach. The core idea here is that free markets are these beautiful, self-correcting machines. If something's off, prices and wages will adjust, and the economy just finds its way back to balance. So the government should pretty much just stay out of the way. But then you've got the Keynesian approach. It argues that, hold on a second, during a downturn, prices and wages can get sticky, meaning they don't fall fast enough. And that can trap an economy in a really long period of high unemployment. So in that case, the government needs to step in and give the economy a boost. And this visual just lays out that whole conflict perfectly. The classical view on the left is all about economic freedom and keeping interference to a minimum. In total contrast, the Keynesian solution to a recession, over on the right, is direct government action. The idea is that by spending money on things, the government can pump demand back into the economy, create jobs, and literally pull the country out of a slump. I mean, these two philosophies are at the heart of almost every economic debate we have. So we've got these big competing theories. But how do we actually know if an economy is doing well or not? How do we track its performance? Well, that's where we move from theory into actual measurement. Just think about it like a doctor giving a patient a checkup. Economists don't just guess. They look at specific, measurable vital signs to figure out how healthy the economy really is. And here they are, the three big ones, the three vital signs of any economy. First up, you have gross domestic product, or GDP. That tells us the total value of everything a country is producing. Second, there's inflation, which measures how fast our cost of living is going up. And third, the unemployment rate, which gives us a really clear picture of the job market. These three numbers together give us that crucial snapshot of a country's economic well-being. Okay, so we've got our three vital signs. Now let's put each one under the microscope. And we're going to start with the biggest, most talked about of them all, GDP. GDP is, without a doubt, the most complete measure of a country's economic activity. It's the grand total of every single thing produced inside its borders, from cars and computers to haircuts and software, all added up over a single year. It really is the ultimate big picture number for a nation's entire output. So where does this giant number actually come from? Well, economists break it down into four main engines of spending. You've got consumption, which is basically all the stuff that we as households spend our money on. Then there's investment. That's what businesses spend on new factories and technology. You've also got government spending, which is everything the government buys. And finally, net exports, which is simply the value of what we sell to other countries minus what we buy from them. And here is the simple but incredibly powerful formula that puts it all together. GDP, which is represented by the letter Y, is just the sum of those four things, C plus I plus G plus NX. It's pretty wild to think that every single news report you hear about the economy growing or shrinking just boils down to changes in one or more parts of this exact equation. Now, this next part is super important. Let's say a bakery made 100 loaves of bread at $2 each last year. Their nominal GDP was $200. Simple enough. But what if this year they still only make 100 loaves, but because of inflation, the price goes up to $3? while their nominal GDP jumps to $300. It looks like they grew, but they didn't actually produce anything more. And that's exactly why economists use real GDP. It strips out the effects of inflation so we can see if we're actually becoming more productive as a country. And speaking of rising prices, that brings us right to our second vital sign, inflation. But simply, this is just the rate at which the overall cost of living is going up. When inflation is high, every dollar you have buys a little bit less than it did before, which slowly but surely eats away at your purchasing power. And our third and final vital sign is the unemployment rate. Now, this isn't just the number of people without jobs. Specifically, it's the percentage of people in the labor force who want a job, are actively looking for one, but just can't find one. It's really the most direct measure we have of how easy or how hard it is for people to find work and support their families. So, we've got these three big numbers: GDP, inflation, and unemployment. But why should any of us care? I mean, what do these abstract stats actually have to do with our day-to-day lives? Well, the answer is they mean everything. There is a really powerful and direct link between a country's abstract economic numbers and the actual real-world well-being of the people who live there. Just take a look at this chart. Along the bottom, you have a country's GDP per person, and going up the side, you have how satisfied its citizens say they are with their lives. The trend is just impossible to miss. As you move to the right, as countries get richer, the bubbles tend to move up. So while we all know money isn't everything, this shows a really clear connection. Economic growth helps create the conditions for happier, more satisfied lives. But that brings us to one final and really crucial question. GDP measures the size of the whole economic pie, right? But it doesn't tell us a single thing about how that pie gets sliced up. A country can have amazing GDP growth, but if all of that new wealth goes to a tiny fraction of the population, is that really success? It kind of leaves us wondering, what other numbers might we need to get the full picture of a nation's well-being?